So tonight's going to be launching a new series here that I'm doing for Next Wave, calling it CNC Tips and Techniques. Based on the feedback that I got from the registration, it looks really great, the kind of questions that came in. I appreciate all that. So for those of you that are brand new, you may find some of this information to be a little bit fast-paced or advanced, but you'll be getting the video for this as well, so you go back and review it. For those of you that have a little bit more experience, feel free along the way, either during the presentation or at the end, to speak up if you have a bigger or deeper question about something. But my plan tonight is that I'm going to go over how I designed Project of the Month that came out in the newsletter. If you haven't seen it, it was that little cutting board that was featured at the beginning, and we'll be looking at it again. And that involves using VCarve to design what I call VCarve chip carving. If any of you have done traditional chip carving using the knives, it can be simulated using the VCarve technique with a few tricks for the layout. And after that, I'm going to open it up for a Q&A. Those of you here tonight get priority. So if you have a particular topic that you would like to address tonight, put it in the chat down below, and when we take our time out for Q&A specifically, I'll take a look at what's in that list. All right, as I mentioned, tonight's webinar or tonight's meeting will be recorded, and I will send out a link to the recording sometime tomorrow, usually by the end of the day, and that'll come out to you. At that point, you also will have my email address, so that if you wish to respond, feel free to do that. As I mentioned, next week and the following Tuesday right now, we've got 2 more webinars booked. Each of those webinars, like tonight, does require registration. It just helps us keep track of who's signing in, gives us a chance to get you the information. If you go to that address there, nextwavecnc.com webinars, you'll find a registration for next week's webinar, and the one in November 4th will be up there shortly. Also, I'll include that information in the email that I send out to you. But that website will always be posting the upcoming webinars. So if you miss your email or are curious about what's happening, you can check that out. Also, on that same page, I have the 3 webinars that I have done several times over the last couple of years for Next Wave. They're kind of 3 core webinars. The one is the getting started. If you're brand new to CNC, just want to get a feel for what it's all about, definitely check that one out if you're brand new, just got your machine or shopping around. And then if you've got your machine and you're trying to understand more about how to use the pendant, whether it's the LCD pendant, the small standard one, or the new 10.1, we have a webinar out there also. The 10.1 pendant, which is the larger pendant, if you've seen that, that's still developing. So I'll be updating that in the future as new information is released on that pendant. And then the third webinar out there is Ready to Control. And that covers if you decide to hook up your computer to your machine, it kind of replaces or can replace the pendant. It does a lot of the same things. And Ready to Control has some really nice advanced features because it's running off your computer, so you actually have more power to run it. So those are out there. If you haven't seen those, I encourage you to check those out, especially if you've had your machine a while and you have questions about the pendant. I go over some functional things about the pendant, which are really useful. In addition to that, I've also listed a course that I did maybe a year or so ago for Next Wave on VCarve. It's pretty intense. It covers these 4 major topics, and they kind of break it down to get you started in VCarve. You can check that out. Vectric themselves also have lots of webinars or videos and such on their website. In particular, I'd like to point out that the Toolpath Essentials webinar Part 2. I know several people raised questions in the registration about toolpathing, and you'll find some basic information there that's worth reviewing. And as we go along tonight or next week and in the future, we'll be taking a look at a lot more about tool pathing as well as bits and feeds and speeds. But for tonight, as I mentioned, we're going to take a look at this project, this cutting board. I'm doing a project of the month for Next Wave. And so part of what we'll be doing at these webinars, we'll be going over that project of the month. I'll be talking about the design process, talking about the tool pathing. And tonight in particular, I'm going to start out talking about the layout of that, how to design that. So you might use this similar kind of application for other projects. As usual, if you have any technical issues with your machine, electrical, software, mechanical, things like that, reach out to the customer service at NextWave. You could reach them by the website or by the email, and they're quite responsive, and they've got a good team there. So give them a call if you've got things that come up. Other resources that are available that I can recommend is the NextWave website in general. If you go to the support tab, there's lots of information out there. You'll find the owner's manuals listed out there as well. The Vectric website is a rich resource of stuff related to VCarve. And CNC Learn and Build, that's my website. I'm developing that. I list live classes out there and some other things, and that'll be developing more on that website as the year goes on. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hop in to the VCarve software. But what I want to do is to start out and basically talk about how I drew this project in the vectors. And as we go through this, hopefully it will you'll pick up some techniques for drawing and tips. I'm kind of treating this as I would any project I design. So some of what I'm going to show you is pretty basic, and some of it's going to be more advanced. For those of you that have some experience at VCarve, you'll notice that tonight I'm probably going to use most of the mouse clicks to do this. There's a lot of keyboard clicks that I could use, but I tend to avoid those when I do demonstration. I like to use the on-screen commands instead because that helps people to see things. So one of the challenges of learning VCarve is that there can be 3 ways to do the same thing. So what I'm showing you tonight is not necessarily the best or the quickest. It is one way to get the job done, but mostly I'm trying to show it that visually it is the easiest to follow on screen. So with that, I have the drawing and a picture here, screen capture, and I have my dimensions here. These are dimensions that I worked out from my project, and I'm going to use those to lay this out tonight. So first off, if we just take a look at the job setup over here, pretty basic job setup. We have a single-sided project. I'm cutting it out of a 6-inch wide board, 12 inches long, and 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to set it up for material surface. A little comment there is that when you do VCarve, the quality of your VCarve, the accuracy of the VCarve is very sensitive to the height of your material. So doing material surface is the recommended Z position if you're going to be doing V-carving. And that's pretty common for a lot of projects, but certainly for V-carving. We're also going to use a center datum for tonight. It just makes the layout, simplifies it, makes it easy. Okay, with that, then when I start a project like this, that sketch on the right might just be a pencil sketch that I've done on a piece of paper, or I may just come in here and start drawing either based on my size of the project I want to do or the size of the material I'm working with. So in this case, I'm going to go into the Draw Rectangle tool, and since we have the datum here in the middle, I'm going to use the anchor point of 0, 0, which is the same as the datum. And my material size, or rather my project, as you can see on the right over here, is 11 by 4.75, which I already have set up. Simply click Create on that. That creates that part of it. Then I'm just going to close out of that, grab that, click on that vector, and then I'm going to duplicate that vector. And one way to know that you have a duplicate vector is if you look close here, you can see how I've got a pink and a black line overlaying each other. Duplicate vectors often trip people up, and that's one way to tell you have it. However, if I select both of them like that, then they both turn pink and it's hard to tell it. But if I just click once, then I end up selecting just one of them. So now that I have that part, I'm going to create this rectangle here, which is 4 by 6. So I'm going to go into my set object size. I'm going to shrink this from the bottom. So I'm going to anchor the measurement. So when I click down here, everything measures from that corner. I also have this linked unchecked because I want to independently change these. If I check that, they will change proportionate to each other. So to start with, I'm going to change the height to 6 inches and the width to 4 inches. And if I click apply, you can see how that moves down in the corner. Now, I know if I do the math here, I have a 3/8 inch offset at the bottom and the right side around this on the perimeter. So I could take this rectangle now, go into my move selection tool, and I'm going to move it a relative amount, which means I'm going to move it from where it's currently at. I want to go to the left in the X direction, so that would be a negative 0.375, and I want to go up in the Y direction, which is a positive. Click apply, and that centers that part of it. With that, I can then start working on the handle part of it, but let's get a line laid in there. So that line is 6.75. So I'm going to just take that line. Oops, let's do that again. Okay, I've got that line. Sometimes I just use my existing layout to help me measure it. So I'm just going to drag that to the bottom. Go back to my move tool. And I'm going to move that up 6.75. And that corresponds now with the shoulder of the cutting board. Next, we'll work on the neck up here. And the handle, we can see the outer diameter is 6 5/8. So for that, I'll get the circle tool. And I'm just going to click right there, create a little circle. And then I'll go in and edit the size, 1.625. Click apply. Close out of that. Now I want that circle centered at the top up here. Easiest way to do that is use the alignment tools. Now I have the alignment tools showing right here in the main screen. If yours are not showing, go up to the main alignment tool right here in the middle, open it up, and down at the bottom, there's a little checkbox right here. When you check that box, all the main alignment tools show up. And the main difference between these alignment tools is that the first 3 of them, you see how they're white. So if I were to check on this first one, it's going to align the item that's selected to the middle of, or the center of my project, like that, right over the data point. Or if I do left and right, it'll go to the middle like that, which is where I want that. I want it centered left and right. The other alignment tools here help you center one object to another object. So this one right here, aligned to the top, the little square here with the arrow.
Can I call you back, Josh?
The little arrow here with this rectangle with this arrow in it is the one you select first. Then hold the shift key down and select the other rectangle, and it'll align it to the inside of the top like that. So it's a very quick way to move objects around and get them aligned. From here, I'm going to add my center circle, which my layout circle is 1.25 inches. So again, I could take that circle, duplicate it, go into my size edit. Let's link those, put it in the middle, change this to 1.25 inches. They both change because it's linked, and click apply. And I have that basic part lined out. Now for the handle, this becomes a type of organic line. So I'm going to just start with a straight line, start from the shoulder, and clicking up here, you notice how it's going to snap to the edge. That's a snap position. Click on that. I've got a rubber band going here. All I have to do is hit the right mouse button. It'll break it like that. Now let's pause for a minute and talk a little bit about snaps. If you look at the upper right-hand corner here, right underneath my name, because I'm logged in here, there are 3 snap icons. The first 2 is called a geosnap, and that means it snaps to different parts of different objects. The second one is the smart snap, and that basically, think of that as snapping to horizontal and to vertical alignment with other tools. We'll be using those along the way, so we'll see how they work out. But you can turn those off simply by clicking on them, and then they turn gray, or turning them back on. There are some times when the magnetic snap like that gets in the way, it interferes with creative drawing, so then I'll turn it off. The third one up here is a grid snap, and you can see here I've got all these dots on my board, and those are grids that you can snap to. That's not one that I use very often, and so if you see dots on your screen and you don't want those, just turn it off right in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, now that I have that line, I want to create a nice kind of French curve in there. So I'm going to right-click, go into Node Edit, go back over it again until I get that little squiggly line symbol, go back in, and now I'm going to convert that to what's called a Bezier curve. But when I switch it to that, I get these control handles which allow me to bend the line. And this lower one, I'm going to bend it down to a horizontal position. When you bend it down to a horizontal position like that, the beginning of the line here forms a right angle with the line below it, perpendicular. So that's a nice way to make sure that that's straight right there. And then up here, oh, let's see, there's one other thing we want to do here. Our handle is 1 inch wide. So let's add a measurement there in the middle. A couple ways we could do that. Let's just add a 1 inch wide rectangle. I'm just going to create that. Let's make sure that our middle is at 0. Click apply. And so now that's centered. So I'm just going to use that as a guide. Go back into my curve, go back into Node Edit. And so now you can see how things, to me, when I'm doing this, things are jumping around a little bit. That's because the snaps are on. So I'm going to turn both of those off. Now when I move it, it moves in a smoother fashion. Okay, so let's move this up here, maybe. About right there. Again, there's nothing real critical here. I might want to move that out just like that, maybe. And then this one, I can move this in too to move it in. Once you learn how to use node editing, it's really powerful for creating custom shapes. Okay, so I'm just going to leave this up here like that. Now, I mentioned that having that horizontal is a value because it gives us a nice straight curve there. So here's a trick. This works with nodes or with Bezier curves. If I go a little selection rectangle around that first one, let go, see how it turns red? Now I hold the shift key down and I select that one. Now they're both red, which means they're both active. Now I'm going to click on the Y key because I want these to align in the Y direction. So watch when I click on that, and it snaps that one right down so it's perfectly horizontal with the other one. So you can do that with any number of nodes or Bezier curves. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Next, I'm going to go up to this circle right here, highlight that. I'm in the node edit still. I'm going to take that little section, it's called a span, and I'm going to delete that quarter of the circle like that. I'm also going to delete this one. And then I left click or right click a couple of times and exit node edit. I don't need this anymore, so I can hit the delete key to delete that. Now I only need to draw this once because then I can go into my mirror selection object. And I have flip across job center because that's my job center, and I'm going to do create a mirror image. So I'm going to flip horizontal, and it flips it right over to that side. So this horizontal line here, we're done with that, so I can delete that. Next, I want that semicircle. Hold the shift key down to select that one and that one. I now have those three objects selected. I want to join those so it becomes one line. And to do that, I'll use the Join Open Vectors tool. Click on that. You can see at the top here, it says I have 3 open vectors. Tolerance, I usually type in something like 0.05. Works out pretty well because really what I'm looking for are joints that are basically touching each other. I don't want wide gaps. I'm just looking for ones that are really close to each other. So after I join it, I'm going to have one open vector left. That's because the bottom of it's open, which is fine for now. Click join and close. Now when I click on that vector, it's one continuous vector. Now I'm going to trim off the shoulder area using the trim tool. And you want to make sure to have this checkbox checked. That way it'll join the shoulder back together. So I'll snip that part off and snip that part off. Close out of that. And now we have a nice continuous vector all the way around. Next up, I'm going to work on doing the design part of it in the middle. And to start with, I've determined that I want to use a triangle that's about 1/3 of an inch in size. So for that, I'm going to take that square right there, hold the control key down, and drag a copy over to my work area. Now to make a triangle out of this, it's quite easy. I go into node edit again. I go over that node, so I get the crosshairs like that, right click and delete that point, and there's my triangle. I'm going to right click again to exit node edit, and then I'm going to take that, grab the corner of it, slide it down to that corner. Okay, so I want that to snap in place. So to do that, I'll turn my snaps back on, the upper right. Now when I grab that corner, it'll snap right there. Again, no need to make a copy of that. I could just duplicate it over, flip it across the job center like that. And while I'm in here, save a few mouse clicks, I'm going to select that one again. And then I'm going to go vertical which puts them way up there, but that's okay. I can just close that, click on it, grab that corner, and drag it down and snap it in place. So there I have my 4 little corners, which you can see how they're carved out on the left side over here. Next, I want to do the rows of triangles around the other edge. So I'm going to grab this one right here. Again, the quickest way to duplicate that is hold the Control key down, click on it. Oh, one more time, click on it until you get the activation. The handles like that. Control key, drag a copy up here, and we have a copy. Now to rotate this, there's a couple keystrokes that are quicker than using the rotate tool. That's the 9 and the 0. And the 9 key rotates counterclockwise like that, and the 0 key goes clockwise. So either one of those works well. Then I'm going to take that little triangle and grab the corner of it, snap it right there to that part. And then I'm going to create a row of those going up along the side. Now, I've already done some math and divided my distance and determined that I need about 14 triangles in there. So for that, to make that duplication easy, I'm going to use what's called the array copy tool. And I want to go in the Y direction, so I'm going to put 14 in there, but I only want one column. Put one column. I'm going to set the gap to 0 because I don't want any space between them, right now anyway. And then I'm going to click copy. Perfect. Okay, when you're doing this kind of layout, depending on what you're trying to achieve, you may determine that you want a certain number of parts or you want a certain size. In this case, I determined that I want a certain number of parts, but I also want them slightly smaller. So you can see how it overshot. That's okay, because what I'm going to do is just click one more time, and I get this control handle right here, and I'm going to drag this down right to that snap point right there. And that scales all those, and they fit very nicely between those 2 corner parts. But the other thing we want is notice, oops, here we go. They've got a little space between them. So I need to add a little space between all those. Quickest way to do that is just to scale all of those individually. And we can do that using the set size tool. At the top, if you haven't discovered this, this is really handy. If all of your objects are identical, when I change this, well, first of all, let's notice here that the height is 5.4. That's the whole row of them, or the whole column. If I scale them individually, it gives me the size of each one individually. So now the height of this triangle, I want to reduce that so I have about, well, I want 0.03 space between them. That's what I've determined for chip carving. Works well. Somewhere between 0.3 and 0.03 and 0.05 seems to leave a nice little space. So I can do math in these fields. So I want this to be 0.03 smaller. So I'm going to type in negative 0.03. And then hit the equal sign. And that gives me my new size. I do not want it linked. So actually, I'm going to uncheck that. What I do want for this one up here, let's see here. Okay, I need to back up one step, so I'm just going to close out of this without any changes. I'm going to go back in. And the first change I want to make is I want to shrink the width of these triangles, but I want it to shrink all the way so it stays aligned on the left side. So I'm going to select that anchor point, and I'm going to change this to an even 0.2. That's what I want. So I'll click apply, and that shrinks those down a little bit. Now I can individually scale these put it back in the middle, do what I did earlier, subtract 0.03 equals, and apply. So now I have the final size that I want. Close out of that. And while those are still active, I could go in to my mirror tool again, and let's flip those again across the middle, like that. And then we'll do basically the same thing on the bottom. I'll grab this corner, drag and copy up, rotate it, go down here, grab the corner, snap it in place. For this one, I want 8 triangles. Go into my array copy tool. In this case, I want 1 row and 8 items, 0 gap. Snap that out, and we can see that snapped really close. But just to make it perfect, I'll just go in and grab that snap right to that snap right there. So when you do designs like this, it's not critical that these triangles be precisely the same. You usually can't see it. If it works out that way, that's great. In this case, we're just slightly, they're a little bit different from each other, but you hardly notice it when the design is done. So now that I've got those, go back into my set size tool. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is change, in this case, the height, make that an even 2, click apply. Now I'm going to go back to my anchor point because I want it to shrink from both sides of the shape. Scale it individually. And in this case, I'm just going to subtract that same 0.03, equal sign, and apply. So there again, I've got a nice spacing between those. Again, I'm going to do a simple flip on this. Let's go vertical, it puts them up there. But I could just grab those and bring those down and snap those in place. Now it's a little off center. So let's do this. I'm just going to temporarily, I'm going to group those. And then I can hit my center alignment tool, and that aligns it perfectly. Now that I have the border triangles done, I can actually zoom in here and get rid of this outer rectangle. I don't need that. So I'll delete that. So one thing that I do when I do designs like this, I do quite a bit of kind of what I call VCarve chip carving. And I'll often take, once I have a design like this, I'll actually save some of these shapes, whether it's the triangles or these fan shapes or the star shapes. And you can scale those up a certain amount and they still carve fine, or you can make duplicates and other designs. So lots of times, once you get a set of designs that you like, you can simply duplicate them over to other projects. And so all this work that we're going through, you get to reuse over and over again. Okay, for this fan shape, I'm going to use some basic geometry here on draw a circle. I've done this a couple of times, and I find that if I start right here at the middle of that triangle, and I draw a circle out right to the middle of the center of the workpiece like that, that's going to be my radius for the outside of that curve. Then I need to set up for these fans. And to start with, I'm simply going to snap a straight line from there, and I'm going to wait till it snaps to 45. You see that right there? It's snapping to 45, and I'm going to click on that, and then hit this right mouse button to close the tool. Now I need to fan those down both directions, but I'm only going to do half of it to start with. So for this one, we'll use the other array tool called the circular array. It's a very powerful tool for doing creative layouts. Just have to kind of understand a couple of things. At the top here, these grayed out numbers, that's the size of my object. You can't change those, but it does give you some idea of how big it is. The rotational center is where this object is going to pivot. By default, it's the middle right here. And if I click here, there you can see that double circle. By default, that's the pivoting point. But I want the pivoting point to be back up here in the corner. So I'm going to left click on that double circle right there and snap it right up there. Now you can see how it moved up to this upper left corner. Then I want 4 divisions here when I'm done, but that means I need 5 lines, but I'm going to spread that over 45 degrees. So let's go put 45 in here. That way it'll put 5 lines over this 45-degree area. Let's see. I might be able to increase that a little bit. Let's undo that with the Control Z button, and let's put 50 degrees in there. There, I like that a little better. Just spread it out a little bit more. Okay, let's close out of that. Now we need to add some curve to these lines. And to do that, select the line, right-click, go into Node Edit, go over the line again, and change it to a Bezier. Now notice we get these 2 control handles. I'm going to select those. And now I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard and just move those over and bend that line. We can come back and adjust it later, but for now we'll leave it right there. Select the next one to Bezier. Select those 2 control arms like that. Move that over. So we'll do that for all of these. And this one, we want to make sure that it gets beyond that triangle. So we'll bend that enough to get beyond there like that. That looks good. And then we can go back and adjust these others if we want to, oops, Control Z. Want to bring that back a little bit. Kind of looking for 4 even spaces here. You get close, it wants to grab it. There we go. Okay, that looks good. So we're going to use those curves. Now, again, we don't have to do this whole fan. We can just do this half of it. But notice that in this fan, we've got these this space also, similar. Quick way to create that is let's exit Node Edit, right-click, select all of those lines, including that line. Now we're going to use what's called the offset tool, and we're going to go to both sides. And if we go to both sides by 0.015, that'll give us a 0.03 between them. Let's deselect this one right now. I'll come back and do that one later, because these, after I create the double line, I can delete the original. So I'll click offset, and you'll see how it deletes the original and creates a set of new lines. Okay, you may get this error. That's because there's some overlapping occurring. That's okay. And bingo, there we go. So now we've got double lines automatically. This one, we want to create a double line, but I don't want to delete that center line. So I'm going to click, uncheck that like that right there. So now I have my basic half of my fan design. Now I can start trimming this. Trim tool, zoom in here, trim that outer line. See if that little nib there gets trimmed. There we go. Trim, trim, trim. When you trim, if you hold the left mouse button down, all you have to do is touch the line and it'll disappear. You don't have to click it every time. Okay, that's the center line. We want to keep that. I'm going to get rid of that and this one and up through there and those two. Okay, let's see. What do we got happening down here? That's okay for now. Let's see. Let's close out it. Although, actually, we're going to keep this open. Now, how do you make sense of this mess of lines down here? Well, you look at your gap, this gap going down through the middle, those three gaps going down through the middle, and follow those down. And basically anything that crosses over that, get rid of it like that. Go over to the next one, go down, cross over it. And this last one right here, oops, too much. Go down. Let's see if that's what I want. Let's back up one step here. Let's see here. That goes down through there. Yeah, that'll do it right here. And we'll take that off. Takes a little bit of study to get this figured out. And we could get that little bit right there.
How do you back up one step?
Sure. Oh, what's your question related? How snapping it?
When you were trimming, how do you back up one step when you decided that you didn't want to trim that one line?
Control Z button is the undo button. So if I control key plus Z, it'll start going backwards one step at a time like that. The Control Z button is a really useful, powerful tool if you make mistakes like that, because every so often you may trim something you didn't want to trim, and that's how you undo it. In fact, I wasn't expecting this one to be so short. So I'm going to trim back here again and see what's happening. But that does look the way it works out. Every fan turns out a little bit different. And then, since I know it's okay, I can also use the Control Y button to go forward and redo what I had done like that.
Okay. That's Control I?
Control Z is the undo, and Control Y as in yield sign.
Yankee.
Yankee, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Is the redo. Yep. So now I have these three shapes or four shapes all created. I can select those. Once again, I can use my mirror tool to save time. I'm going to do flip about line, but I need a line to do that. So having selected those, I then select this middle line, and that's why I saved it. Notice now how this flip about line is available. So as soon as I click on that, it flips it up that direction. And it's a total mirror image of it, so it's nice and symmetrical. I can select that center line, don't need that, delete that. And so now I have this shape. Now let's just get rid of this other line out here. Rather than use the trim tool, if I select the whole thing, I can just simply delete it with the delete key. Now I'm going to select this fan shape and group it. And once again, the mirror tool is just flip it horizontal. It goes right over there. And then let's put a little line right down here. I'm just going to draw a straight line here. And I'm going to hold the shift key down and select that border. Oh, okay. Something else I want to do is I want to get that border all grouped together. So I'm going to select all those. When I make components like this, I like to kind of group them all so that it's one. So I'll hit take and group those. There we go. Now I'm going to select that line I created, select that border, and I want this line to be positioned vertical in there in the middle. So I'm going to select that center vertical tool, one object to the other, and that snaps it right down to that middle point. I'll be using that a couple of times. First, I'll be using it by selecting those two fans, selecting that, selecting those two, hold the shift key down, select that, mirror tool, flip vertical, and it didn't flip correctly because I clicked the wrong one. I have to click the flip about the line. There we go. And once again, I'm going to select that one and group those together. So those are done. Now we're going to move on to our stars, which are similar. And the starting rectangle or circle is 2 3/4. So I'm going to go and get a circle, draw that out, just drag it out, approximate. While it's highlighted, the first time I draw it, I could go back up to the top up here. I can edit that size and click apply, and it will snap that to that size. So now I have the 2.75 circle. Now with that, I don't need that line anymore, so I'll exit that, delete that. Now I'm going to draw a star inside of that. Now the star tool, you'll find that if you change the inner radius, it changes the shape of the points. Somewhere around 45 gives you kind of this, I guess you might call it kind of a Texas star, American star, Christmas star shape. And I'm going to go right here to the middle of my circle. And again, I can just snap it right out to that circle and it'll snap it right to size. With that done, I'm going to start dividing it up, which goes pretty quick, just using the snaps again. I'm going to go from one point to that point, hit the space bar, point to point, space bar, and just divide the whole thing up into equal parts. When I first designed this, I wanted to create some additional divisions up here. One of the goals I have, as you can see on the left side over here, is that I don't want I want the VCarve to go the full V depth, but I also don't want it to cut through the material. So one of my rules I set up for myself is no flat bottoms. If you've done flat bottoms, I want everything to go down to a V, which means every shape has to be small enough so it doesn't cut to the bottom. I also just noticed a little something here. This one part of the star is fully open and these are all divided. So somewhere along the way, I clipped off a couple of extra lines on that particular design and didn't notice it. Okay, so with this one then, I also want these divisions of the outside. So I want those divided up. Now, 360 divided by 5 is 72 degrees from point to point. And then that divided, as we see over here, I've got it marked up, is 24. So I have 15 sections, 3 in each one of those. So that's 15 total sections, totaling 24 degrees each. So here's an easy way to draw that. Now, I'm just looking at something. I see it. You look for little alignment issues, like this star should be in the middle. So let's double check this circle to see if that's in the middle. And then let's check this star. There, much better. So every so often you'll find that things get out of alignment like that. Well, now all of this got out of line too. So let's select all of that and move that over also. So there, I think we're back in good shape. Okay, so let's find a way to divide this up. Notice that these lines these two lines don't necessarily go to the middle. They go to the middle right there. So to create that, I'm going to create a little short working line right here like that. And now I'm going to use the rotate tool again, copy, erase, circular copy. But I want it to go a total of 72 degrees because that's how many degrees are from one point to the other. And I want 3 lines. And let's find out where that, so the center point, let's put 0 on that, see what that does. Okay, there's our, see it popped up there. So I'm going to drag that down right here for now and increase that to 3 and copy. So there I've got my tick marks across the outside. Now all I have to do is go into node edit, grab that node, left click, drag that down to that point, let it snap, grab that one down to that point, let it snap. So now I've got 3 equal divisions right there. This one, I can delete that. Then I'm going to select those 2, and I'm going to use the circular copy array again. Once again, I need to find where my, my center point is probably right there. And sure enough, I snapped on it. Now I see it. If you don't see your center point, if you simply go up here and change one of these dimensions, just a small amount, and hit tab key, it will pop up then. Sometimes it's kind of hidden. But I want that to be back to the middle here as well. So I'm going to snap that back to the middle also. And now we want 5 copies because we have 5 areas. We want a total angle of 360 all the way around. Increase that to 5 and copy that. And that gives us all of our divisions. Now, just like we did before, I'm going to select all of those, go into my offset, do the same thing I did before. I'm going to delete the original because I don't need those center lines, and click offset. Get that error message. That's because they're overlapping. That's okay. And there the lines are. Now I'm looking at this and I realize I'm missing one line from right here to here. So let's just close out of that. I can go back and add that line. Oh, I can't actually. I'm going to hit Control Z. I'm going to add it right here because I need that point and that point. So I'd forgotten that line. As you can see, it's very easy to go back and back up a couple steps. Now I can go back in to my offset tool, delete the originals, continue, and there we are. Okay, so I'm going to close out of that. Now I need to start cleaning this up. This takes a little bit. It's possible that I could do some duplication on this also, but you can also go in and just, again, trim up everything. Just work your way around the whole area, and it doesn't take too long. Again, I'm just holding the left. Oops, there, I clipped too much, so I'll hit the Control Z. So on my mouse, I have a roller wheel, and you should get a mouse with a roller wheel because it allows you to zoom in and out like this. Also, if I press down on the mouse, if you get a roller wheel that is also like a third button, if I click on it and then hold it down, I can pan. That's how I'm sliding this thing left and right. I'm holding down the roller wheel. And then I click on the left mouse button and hold that down and do the trimming. So roller wheel is down, left mouse button is down. Roller wheel is down, left mouse button is down. The other option I could do is I could zoom out, and wherever you place that scissors or your cursor and you hit the roller wheel, it'll zoom in right in that location. So it's a quick way to zoom in and out just with the roller wheel. Go into these joints, get those cleaned up. Okay, then in the middle. Down the middle, I'm just going to work my way around the outside like that. And that last shape that's left there, I could just select it and delete it. Saves a few clicks. Okay, let's check. This looks good. So again, we'll highlight that. It's all individual parts right now, but I want to group it so they stay together. So I'll group it and then they turn solid color. Okay, the last thing we've got set up here is going to be the star at the top. It's basically the same approach as before. You'll notice that I'm getting a couple of signals here. You see those dotted lines that are vertical and left and right, or on the left side. That, in fact, is what's called the smart snap, because that's giving me some alignment. Now I even have a 45 one. I also have my cursors turned into that round bullseye type shape. That means I'm in the middle of that existing circle. So it's very handy for snapping. So I'm going to click on that, hold the left mouse button down, and drag that out, and I have a lot of points. So let's reduce that down to 5, hit apply. That looks good. And the diameter looks correct as well. It says 0.625, which is half of our circle. Go back, same kind of way we did before. I'm going to go back and divide this up. Spacebar is the quick way to end the line. So all those dotted lines you see zooming around on the window there, that's the smart snap. And again, sometimes they kind of get in the way. The geo snap is what's helping me snap to these points. So all I really need is my geo snap. And that last line I did was in the wrong place. So let's undo that. In fact, the one before that was in the wrong place too. Like I said, those geo snaps were, or rather the smart snaps are confusing me. Okay, let's go here. There we go. And the last one. Okay, once again, we simply go in, we'll go grab that whole area. We'll go in and get our offset. Same as before, we'll hit delete originals, click offset, continue. And once again, we'll just clean this up, delete the outside line, get the trim tool. Our way around. Control Z to bring that back. Again, I'm just holding the mouse button down, the left click, and I can just zip right around here and erase everything. And again, there, I'll just select that, delete it. And once again, let's go ahead and group that. Now, optionally, if you wanted a hole in the top for hanging this up, we could go in and let's make that 0.26, a little over a quarter of an inch. You make it whatever size you want. The reason I go a little over a quarter of an inch is because that way, when I do a tool path, my 1/4 inch router bit will definitely fit in there. Sometimes if you do a 1/4 inch circle and you try to use the profile tool path, it won't fit in. And you could also use the drilling tool path, and we'll probably get to that next week when we talk about tool paths. But that's just something I'll mention again next week. But I'm going to go in here and just create a little circle there for now. And that does it. All right. So that wraps up the design part of this. Like I said, I think we'll revisit this next week. There's a lot more to say about the tool paths. I've got those set up, and we'll take a look at those. But if you did receive the file, they did come with tool paths, so you can run it if you like, or if you want to wait till next week if you have questions. But anything else tonight before we wrap it up tonight? Kind of an open Q&A time at this point. Something about this project or something else? Let me check the chat. I know there are some things in there. We'll start there.
Brady, I think you talked about receiving files. I think I only received the thing to get on your webinar tonight. That's all I've ever received.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of suspected such. So NextWave sends out an e-newsletter, which is something you have to sign up for, or you may have signed up for it, maybe go into your spam file. But I will include a link in the email to you also, or you can self-serve yourself. Let me bring this up here. Let me see if I could find the link to this. I've got so many windows open here. Let's try this. They are posting those out on their website now also. So let's
Now, which website?
it would be the NextWave.
NextWave website?
Yeah. So let me bring it up. I'll actually show you where it is. Let's see, here we go.
You say they're posting these files on their website?
They are. They're posting the project file, not the video. Well, the video from this will be posted eventually too. But for now, the file is readily available out there. Let's double check to see where it is. Okay, you should see their website. Okay, out at their website under projects, I think that's where they're listing it. There we go, right there. So that's the project right here. The instructions are listed there, basic instructions of how to run it. And then the VCarve file is right there. So if you didn't get the e-newsletter, feel free to go out to their website under projects and you can download that right there. And we'll be listing new ones there each month as they come up.
I just happened to have bought a 6-foot 1x6 quarter sawn maple board today. Shucky darns.
Oh, hey, that'll be perfect.
Hey, Randy, this is Keith.
Yeah.
Got a couple classes with you. Hey, I was about 5 minutes late getting logged on. Where's the sign up for the newsletter?
Oh, let's go out to the website. It's got to be. Oh, let's see. Where is that? Oh, newsletter. That's a good question. Let's see here. Well, let's see here. Right here at the bottom.
Okay,
your email list and never miss an update for next wave. So that's everything right there. If you put that in, you'll get onto the newsletter sign up.
okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Randy,
Yes.
this is Ron Downing. One of the problems I have is I don't know how to set the chip load because I get sawdust. I don't get chips.
Okay. Let me we can come back here. I'll pull this over here. I'm just going to turn off my sharing for a minute. We'll bring up the faces here. We'll just talk about this for a minute. We go back to that if anybody has questions about it. And I also saw a couple things in the chat that we could look at. Okay, so so you're getting sawdust. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the machine and your router bit that you're using.
Well, like just about any router bit, but I mean, my machine is a 5520.
Okay. And do you have a spindle or a router on it?
I have a spindle.
2 horse or 3 horse?
2 water cooled.
Okay. All right. And generally, what RPMs are you running that at?
Oh gosh. I think about 1600.
Yeah. Oh. And what feed rate are you often running at?
I haven't run my machine in a while because we've moved twice in the last year,
Okay.
and I haven't really been able to. I'm just now getting in a situation where I can set it back up again, but I don't recall.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. So in general, if you're running the 2 horse spindle, and this, if you have the 3 horse spindle, you can be a little bit more aggressive. If you have a woodworking router, you can be a little bit more aggressive. The 2 horse spindle, you can still be fairly aggressive with it. But what I mean by that is, I almost always run the 2 horse spindle right at around 20,000 RPMs, which is faster than what you're running, which means you'd actually get more sawdust. But I'm also running feed rates in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 inches a minute. Now, by the rule of thumb that I use, it's better to take a shallow pass depth and keep your machine moving quickly, because the pass depth doesn't affect chip load, but it does affect the load on the router. So obviously, if you were trying to cut an inch deep, that's going to put a big load on your router and your machine. You just can't do it. But
Right.
cutting an 1/8 of an inch deep, or even 1/16 of an inch deep, you can move right along with almost any router bit at that depth. And then you can play with your feeds and your speeds. And even if you slow down to something like 1600 or 16,000, which will improve your chip load, you'll still be able to cut through the wood. So the other thing to consider if you're getting a lot of chips, especially with straight bits, is switch to a single flute router bit, because a single flute router bit will double your chip load. Rule of thumb, go on the shallow side for your pass depth, keep your feeds rates going. On a 2 horse spindle, I typically go somewhere between 100 and 120 with a straight bit. And I'll use a RPM of 18 to 22,000. The single flute bit will give you the greatest improvement on your chip load. Now, V bits and ball nose bits are toss up because the diameter changes. And so a V bit has a very small chip load at the tip and a large chip load at the edge. So you could start with a similar kind of feed rate, but you're going to get a lot more sawdust off of carving bits and V-cut bits. I mentioned earlier that one VCarve training that I do that's on Toolpath specifically. Definitely check that out. That'll help you. We'll take a look at more of this as we go along with these meetings, but start there. Hopefully that helps.
One of the questions that I had when I saw your project and you're cutting the cutting board out of a piece of wood, when you, depending on the direction and the grain of the wood, there'll be some areas will, cut very smoothly, and then other areas it will, I guess, lift up the grain of the wood, or I don't know exactly the right term, but so you'll have half of it will be smooth and half of it will be a little bit on the rough side, just by the fact of how the router bit is actually cutting into the wood. So are you doing anything special with your project to prevent that, or is it just going to happen?
First thing, use a very sharp router bit, a fresh
Sure.
router bit. That's kind of a given. We know that. Some woods tend to fuzz more than others. Even like I just cut some cherry this last week for a guy, and one board was really clean, and the other, I couldn't believe how fuzzy it was. It was like it was fur or something. It was just very, very fuzzy. So sometimes different types of wood will cut, the same kind of wood will cut differently. Sometimes, depending on the kind of setup you're doing, if it's V carving, you don't have a lot of choice on the feed direction. With straight bits and some ball nose bits, when depending on the tool path, you can choose a different feed direction, whether it's climb or conventional cut. Depending on how critical the setup is, I'll go back and recut it just like 10 thousandths deeper to see if I take a little skim off of it and get rid of that fuzz.
Yeah, I've thought about with it's actually a round nose bit. You go in one direction, the first cut, and then you go back and run the other direction, but not really take any material off. I don't know if that's actually possible on that tool path, but anyway, it is something that's been kind of causing issues. It's not really a big deal, but you end up with having to do more cleanup than you'd really like to do. So,
Well, the type of wood is going to have a big factor on that. Cherry, walnut, maple, oak generally cut the cleanest. Like I said, with exceptions there.
Sure.
You get into pine. I've had some pine that cut really clean, and other pine didn't cut well at all. Surprisingly, basswood, which is like the premier carving wood, I don't even attempt to route that because it gets so fuzzy for me. It's just the action of it.
Okay.
Now, here's how far I've gone on some projects. I have zeroed out the router bit, and then I've raised the router bit up by 10 thousandths or 20 thousandths and re-zeroed it above the material a little bit, cut it, then taken it back down and just run the whole tool path again. I've even gone so far as to shellac the whole thing to make that fuzz stiff and go back and cut that off. So,
Sure.
we'd like to have it right off the machine nice. The fact is, because we're cutting in so many different directions, as you mentioned,
Right.
There's some limits to that.
Okay. Well, all right, that's probably enough on that. One thing I wanted to say at the beginning, you talked about previous programs that you had, and you talked about Ready to Control. I've been using that a lot, and that's really, I think, really saved some errors on my part, because you can see what the cutting is going to look like before you actually cut it, which makes a huge difference. So anyway, I'm just plugging that as a good thing for people to explore. Plug your computer in and run it, and I think it'll make a big difference.
I use Ready to Control about half the time. I do like it. Some people don't like to take their computer to the shop, and I understand that, but I find it quite useful.
Yeah.
Randy,
Yeah. Okay. That's good enough. Thanks.
Thank you.
yeah, Randy, Bob here. You said in the beginning that the computer was better to use than the controller.
What I meant was that the computer has additional features that the standard pendant doesn't have.
Well, I've had a pennant for 3 years and I've never used it. I've always used the computer because it's right below my CNC.
Oh, well, you're ahead of the game then. I mean,
Oh,
you've got
okay.
more features with the computer than you do with the little pendant.
Okay,
Yeah.
I won't change then.
No need to change back. The little pendant is very simple to use. It's very convenient, but it doesn't have quite as many features as
Well, the pendant I have is the one that's, I don't know, what is it, 5 inches
Yeah.
long, 4 inches wide?
yeah, that's the standard small one.
You know?
Yeah, that's the one I have too, and sometimes it makes it real hard because your fingers hit the wrong project,
Yeah.
and and then you have to go back and start all over again to get it down, to get the right project. So how do you hook up your computer and use your computer directly?
So Ready to Control hooks up with what looks like a printer cable directly to the front of the control box, and it runs just right off the screen, and you
Okay.
use your mouse. If you haven't seen the Ready to Control webinar, definitely check that out. That actually goes through all the details of hooking it up.
Well, I mean, you have to order the cable from Next Wave?
Well, how long have you had your machine? 3 years, you said?
Yeah.
Well, there was a cable that came with it, actually.
Okay. Is
You
that the
can find
cable that hooks up to the pendant?
the cable goes between your control box and your computer. So on your
Okay.
computer, it's a standard USB connection, which is that rectangular connection. And then going into the front of the control box is kind of a square connection. Do you still
Okay.
have your manual for your tool? Because it probably shows in there how to hook it up too.
Yeah, I'm sure I do. I just got to find it. Like I said, we just recently moved again.
Got it. Got it. There's also a manual out on the website for Ready to Control underneath support. And if you download that manual, that goes through all the steps of hooking it up as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Randy,
Thank
Bob,
you.
one more time. Bob, Randy,
Yeah, Bob.
I'll give you one more. I want a 20-watt laser so I can cut 1/8 plywood. And I have one of the original CNC Shark Pros. I'm running a Bosch Colt on it. I've never had a problem with underpowered. But they tell me I can't not put a 10-watt or a 20-watt laser on that gantry anyway. Give you something to work on.
Have you upgraded the control system on that?
Yes, yes.
Well,
The fact is, like I said, I got, CNC Shark Pro, and my control panel says it's running one of the new red ones. They're fooling it into believing that I got another machine, but it works. It's been working like that for 3 years. So
I think the main thing with the 20-watt laser on that machine. Yeah, what I don't know is I just worked with a guy who had the Next Wave Shark Pro machine, and he has the pendant too, but he's still running a slightly older software on it. And that would be the only thing I could imagine is that the firmware won't handle the 20-watt. Otherwise, mechanically, you could just make a bracket for it to hook it on to the existing tool.
yeah, I'm going to have to call tech up again.
See whether their objection is the bracket or if it's the firmware.
Okay. They said they were busy on other things.
Well,
Design new products.
if you don't get satisfaction from tech support the first time around, drop me an email, send them another notice.
I've never had a problem with tech support at
They're good.
all.
They're good as a whole. Sometimes they miss a few bits of information or something. So,
I gave them a good one about a month ago. I had a project I couldn't get either one of my touch plates in and make it work. So I used piece of tinfoil, 2-inch long piece of tinfoil wrapped around the prong.
yeah.
Hook my magnet up and use the tinfoil as a test plate. It worked beautifully.
So I noticed somebody asked in the comment section about vector validator. The vector validator is definitely a tool we'll look at some point. It is it has to do with the fact that if you have lines that are overcrossing, overlapping, that there's a problem or it might cause a problem with the tool path, that's the warning. Let me just bring that up and maybe we'll wrap it up with that notice. I'll show you here on the screen. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so if I probably don't have that problem right now, but let me create a problem. Let's do this. I'll grab that circle and bring it over here, make a copy of it. And there are a handful of problems that you can run into when you go to set up. It really applies to tool pathing, but it can apply at other times also. But let's say that I'm going to insert a node in here. Okay, you see that little circle right there, right? When you zoom out on it, you really can't see it. But if we go to toolpath that, let's take a VCarve toolpath, and I'm going to select all of those and hit calculate. Here's where your may contain overlaps or intersections. Go to vector validator. Vector validator is this green check mark right here on the left side. And when I click go to vector validator, it'll open up that tool. And there it is. So the most common one is you want to put it in V-carving mode because that's the type of tool path that it often shows up at. And then you search selected. And notice how that corner pops up. And if you zoom in, it'll reveal the problem. And to fix it, one like this, the easiest thing is just to take the trim tool and trim that end off. Now, when I go back in and calculate it, I don't get that error and everything carves fine. So whether it pops up when you're creating a tool path, or if you just want to check your vectors, like if I grab those, you can also go in and check VCarve mode. You don't have to have a tool path up. Search. And notice I got all kinds of problems here. I got intersections. Well, if I zoom in on this, that's because that circle is overlapping with that area. So let's try it again. I'll select that whole thing, but I'm going to deselect that circle. And I'm just focusing on those highlighted ones. And now I get no errors. So you can either proof out your work before or after, but that way, when it pops up in VCarve, like I tell people, whenever an error message pops up or when any message pops up, read the message and understand what it's saying. There are times when you can actually ignore some of the VCarve error message you get, but if you do go in here, you'll see it. One thing that's really amazing about Vectric is that when I start out with them, that little curve that you saw, a little overlap, they didn't notify you about that being a mistake, and your V-carving would go crazy. It would carve all over the top. It did really crazy stuff. So they've worked really hard on trying to make this as foolproof as possible. And with that said, there are even some little errors like that they will catch. But if you go ahead and carve it anyway, it sometimes skips over them. So the best way to know that is to go to your 2D, your 3D view here and look at this preview. And what you see here is what you're going to get 99.9% of the time. So previewing is critical. And if it's not working, then go back to your 2D view and verify it.
I can't imagine anybody cutting without previewing.
Well, it happens. Mostly what happens is people miss the error in the preview. But no, that preview window, this is, the old saying about measure twice, cut once. This is one of those areas that you can catch yourself. If it doesn't look right here, don't proceed. It's either your tool path or something's wrong with your vectors. So,
Thank
Randy,
you, Randy.
yeah.
one quick note for those of us who have larger fingers on the pendant. I found using the eraser end of a small pencil works perfect.
I was going to suggest that as well. I use that all the time.
Yeah.
I also have a pen that has one of those little rubber tips on the back end of it. Because yeah, my fat fingers tend to hit the wrong button also. Also, if you haven't seen the pendant webinar, I really do encourage you to see it. Here's why, because in there, I talk about that if you do hit the wrong cutting file, or when you hit a cutting file, a couple of screens pop up. It's called the header information. And in that header information, in the webinar, I show you how to read that header information because it'll give you the file, the material size, the zero location for your project. It even tells you what router bit that you set up in VCarve. And I always recheck that because sometimes I either click the wrong file or I may have selected the wrong router bit or the wrong tool path in VCarve and missed it. So that's your second chance when you're at your machine to measure twice and cut once, is to check that header information and read down through maybe the first 2 or 3 screens and understand what is said on there. And so if you haven't seen the pendant webinar, check it out. I go into detail over that as well.
Nothing's more embarrassing, Randy, than designing with a 60-degree bit and then cutting it with a 45.
I can think of some things that are more embarrassing, but that's a pretty good one all the same.
I just did it today.
I was working with a student last week, and I was training them to go through that, read that header information, because we were going through 5 different tool paths. We had them set up, cutting at different depths. And path 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I had them clicking through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yeah, their fat finger hit path 5 when they should have been hitting path 4, and their last tool path. And I felt bad because, they were trying to get their project done, and they felt bad because I had told them 4 times to read that header information. The 5th time they skipped it. So it'll bite you if you don't pay attention to it.
You chip carve with a 45 or a 60?
I do both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. For large carvings, I'll use a 45. For detailed carvings where I want a lot of detail, like 1/4 inch tall or 3/8 tall lettering, then I'll switch to a 60. The 60-degree bit, it's always the same width at the top with V carving, but it goes deeper, so it makes it look stronger.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for tonight, everybody. Hopefully you found this worthwhile tonight. I'll get that video out to you, and you could drop me an email if you got a problem file that's hanging you up. Drop me a copy of it. I'll take a look at it for you. If you need help designing a whole file, we can talk about that too. Otherwise, maybe I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care.
Good night.
Thank you.
Yep.